Your Crisis Coach with Scott H. Silverman and Fred Carroll. An addiction recovery and mental wellness discussion. Welcome to Your Crisis Coach with Scott H. Silverman, the good-looking guy. Actually, that's hard to say today. That's hard to say, Scott. You may not be the best-looking guy in the room today. Or any week, because I'm here usually. So Let's put our egos aside. It's me, Fred Carroll, you, Scott Silverman, and we brought a friend today, Steve Breen. How are you, Steve?
Good, thanks. Hey, Fred. Hey, Scott.
I was going to call you a cartoonist, but I don't know if that's what you are.
Yeah, that's fine. It's fine with me. I'm kind of an all-around creative sort, doing a bunch of different things at any given moment, but that's a mouthful. So,
I didn't know if cartoonist was a proper terminology because I believe you're a 2-time Pulitzer Prize winner.
Yes.
So, are you willing to share one of them, or you're one of them guys?
No. In fact, a lot of people don't know this, but if you bring your Pulitzers with you to Olive Garden, they'll give you 20% off. So I'm always carrying them in my pockets with me when I leave the house.
Excellent. So, Scott, how are you today, Scotty?
Oh, well, all I need to do is show up at Olive Garden with my gray hair. I get the senior discount. I don't have to carry anything around. I'm well today, Fred. We were just talking earlier, watching the first couple weeks of the new administration. Very exciting. Oh my God. And, I'm doing okay today. And Steve, you may not know this, but, and we want you to explain to people what you do, because first of all, it's pretty unique. And second of all, you're an icon here in San Diego with your, and, I have my old friend who was a CPA, used to, every week he would submit something to you, and you would pick somebody's work. And I think after 15 years of submission or something, he finally got picked. He was so excited. And I think that's about the time you and I were talking to each other about my book. And he goes, well, can you say hi for me? And I said, well, no, but, keep it up. But I saw you speak many years ago. I can't remember the name of that Chinese restaurant down by the water in Point Loma, with it was the honorary deputy sheriffs, I believe. Nice. And, there are a lot of old San Diego in that room, and a lot of people that, I think you must have gotten like 11 standing ovations with your presentation and your work. It was awesome, and you have such a following here. I mean, there's 3.3 million people here, and I understand 2.9 people know who you are. I mean, that is incredible. Incredible. And so it was kind of fun just to work with you. Of course, I got no mentions in your article, but I won't hold that against you. Maybe on round 2, and we'll have you talk to some of the other experts. But so, Steve, anyway, welcome to the show today.
Thank you.
So tell our listeners, we have 4 of them, and I think 2 of them are going to be getting out of prison next week, so they'll be able to see this. And assume you're talking to an audience who has no idea what you do or what you've done and what you're doing. So please give us a little bit of your history. I mean, a dual Pulitzer Prize winner. I mean, I think you're the most famous person I've ever met. And I like to think I got around for a little while. So that's pretty prestigious, my friend. I know you're pretty humble about it, but it's not easy to do. And your competition's pretty global, if I'm not mistaken. So Steve, take it away. Tell us who you are, what you've been doing, and why it's so friggin' famous.
No, I'm not, especially young people. You go up to a young person these days who doesn't, follow the news too closely, and they don't know who any editorial cartoonist is anymore. But thank you, Scott. You're very generous for that intro. I'm Steve Breen. I'm the editorial cartoonist for iNewsSource now. iNewsSource is a San Diego-based investigative newsroom, and they do a lot of good work. We do a lot of good work. And I was formerly with the San Diego Union-Tribune. I was there for about 23 years. But yeah, I'm born and raised in Southern California. I went to UC Riverside, political science major, and it was there that I discovered that I loved editorial cartooning. And I worked for about 7 years on the East Coast at the Asbury Park Press in New Jersey. And then I came here to the Tribune in 2001, and that brought me to San Diego, right? And yeah, I've been here ever since. My family and I live here, and it's a great, wonderful place to raise a family, as you know. And so I'm still doing editorial cartoons, but you know, newsrooms are changing and audiences are changing. So one of the ways of presenting content now is, or doing your storytelling. It's kind of in a graphic novel format, and they're calling it illustrated reporting. So you take a bunch of facts and data, and you format them into panels and captions and so on. So it kind of looks like a page out of a graphic novel, and it's a way of not only bringing in young readers, but bringing in readers of any age, because you could address topics that are pretty dry or inaccessible, and you could kind of make them a lot more interesting with those visualizations.
So, Steve, not to interrupt you, but explain editorial cartoon, because for somebody who historically maybe doesn't read the newspaper, and like my wife, she goes to the obits, I go to the local section, we all have our favorite section, but and I don't go to your section anymore because you're not there anymore. But what is an editor? And people know what an editorial is, I hope, but an editorial cartoon, I think it begs for a little bit of explanation for those who may not understand it, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure. Editorial cartoons, also known as political cartoons, are traditionally on the editorial page, and it's a usually one-panel piece of artwork that has a point of view. It makes an opinion. Comic strips, sometimes people call what we do, the funnies or a comic strip. Comic strips usually are not political, they're not commentary, and they have reoccurring characters, Garfield, Peanuts, Blondie. But with an editorial cartoon, you're taking a subject in the news and you are crystallizing its essence, and you're forming an opinion. And sometimes it's funny and humorous, but it's not always funny and humorous. If sometimes there's like a big national tragedy, like a plane goes down or some terror attack, and I'll say, I have to go do a cartoon on that. And people think, what are you thinking? Why would you be so insensitive? But you just have to treat the subject matter appropriately, so not all cartoons are funny.
What's the most inappropriate thing that you've done?
People always ask that. Well, anything on race or religion is gonna, those are minefields that you have to tread very carefully. You're like Jeremy Renner in The Hurt Locker with that big suit on, walking over that terrain. So, I don't know. I can't think of a particular cartoon offhand, but there's been a couple that I've gotten zapped with.
Are you so I'm an author and I've written books, and I know that when I go back after publishing and stuff and look back at it, I have regret of I should have done this, should have done that. Do you still get that?
Yeah. I'll look back sometimes at a cartoon. It's usually like, oh, that idea kind of stunk. Why did I do that one? So it's usually like quality, not so much content or subject matter.
Right.
But no, I'll go back and look at my stuff and wish I hadn't done things. But it's never looking back with regret at my point of view, meaning the political topic that I wanted to comment on. I like that's all fair game. It's just, did I drop the ball on a creative level making my point.
Right. And there is danger involved in it, right? Where people do get upset with you, correct?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And it could, even more so, things have changed in the past 20, 30 years because now in this political arena, we're so polarized. So people, they'll look at one of my cartoons on Donald Trump and they just kind of automatically assume that if I'm criticizing Donald Trump, then I buy into every idea on the left.
Right.
And conversely, if I do a cartoon zinging Kamala Harris, then I embrace everything that Donald Trump and the Republicans want to do. It's just this dichotomy or whatever that people can't break out of. They don't see any nuance.
I assume you get numb to it after a while. You just expect, know what to expect after experience. But for somebody new doing this, it must be tough.
Yeah, well, you do. You develop a thicker skin, and you just kind of come to the awareness. You just you learn to realize that people want to feel heard. They want to feel like their opinion matters, and I've come to understand that. And also, it's not personal. People are just so worked up, and the media has had a lot to do with that. How you got your Sean Hannity's and you got your Rachel Maddow's out there, but if you have like a nuanced kind of presentation of the news, the networks and places, they're not really interested in you. They want the polarizing partisan figures, because I guess it's more entertaining. But anyway, people want to feel heard, and you can't argue if they're really worked up. You can kind of apologize for if they misinterpreted the cartoon. You could do your best to explain what your thinking was on the cartoon. But if they're really angry and worked up, it does not help at all for you to get angry and worked up with them and try to engage in this intense political discussion.
Yeah, it's tough.
Yeah.
So, Steve, got a question.
Yes.
When you were doing your work in the Union-Tribune, and that's kind of where, unfortunately, I have my history, or fortunately, was your work in sync with what was written around it, or was it just basically topical or timed a certain way, or did they try to, for obviously if something happens on a Tuesday and you write about it on Wednesday and it goes in the paper on Thursday, the comments that are coming in on Thursday's response may have been to something that happened on Monday or Tuesday. Because it was always interesting to me to watch your work and then see comments about, homeless people sleeping in vans near the beach. And your comment was something around, the environment and dolphins who are mating in warmer waters and Ocean Beach. So it was just kind of interesting. Was that up to the editorial people who did that, or your department or your publisher, or how'd that work?
No, people would always try to read into that. And the simple answer is I would try to match my cartoon to the editorial, topic wise. If they were doing something on homelessness, I would try to do a cartoon on homelessness. But if I couldn't come up with an idea, I would just have to pick the best idea I was able to come up with that day, and we'd go with that one.
Okay, so there was some effort to try to tie them together.
There was, and we would go back and forth. Like, do I always have to agree with the position of the editorial page? And that was kind of an evolving policy over the years that I was at the Union-Tribune, kind of dependent on who the publisher was. Most of the time I would, but I didn't always agree with our editorials,
Got it.
Yeah.
Well, what's off limits?
What would be off limits? What would be off limits is if they ran an editorial, a written editorial, and on that same day for me to do a cartoon contradicting or disagreeing with that editorial, that would be off limits. But if it wasn't on the same day and I kind of had a point that was a little bit different than what their traditional viewpoint was, I'd be able to get away with that sometimes.
Okay.
Yeah. But I always had great relations with my editors there at the Union-Tribune. Editors and publishers. Most publishers kind of left us alone. The only ones that got involved were Papa Doug and John Lynch, where they would try to kind of get us to do this and that.
Now, do you become an aficionado?
Fred, those were different owners of the paper, just so you know. I came in as.
Yes.
Do you become an aficionado? Like, do you have a favorite artist? Do you have a favorite cartoonist and stuff? Do you know them all, like the history of it and all that?
Oh, yeah. Oh, I do.
Yeah.
I do. I have favorites. I have guys that I look up to. There's guys still working today that I looked up to when I was coming up 30 years ago. And I revered their work, and I would study their work, and I would try to meet them and so on. I love it. I love it. And it's sad for me to see journalism as a whole kind of, collapsing. But certainly our profession of editorial cartooning, that's.
Are you familiar with the restaurant in New York City where, is it on Second Ave where all the cartoonists, all the illustrators were and stuff? Was that where it was, Second Ave in New York in the 40s, 50s, 60s, all that?
Yeah. Is that Sardi's or something? Or is that
there's a restaurant there. I went to a steakhouse and I can't think of the name of it.
Yeah.
I know it's Stephen King's favorite steakhouse in New York. I know that because he's got pictures all over. But the cartoonists used to come in and draw on the walls in order to get free meals.
Yeah. I think I've popped in there. It's super famous. You're right. We need something. Is it the Palm? Is that it?
Palm? Yes, the Palm 2.
Yeah,
the Palm 2 on Second Ave. You're right.
Yeah. And we had a Palm in San Diego. Is that still there over by the ballpark? I don't know.
I've never been to San Diego.
Oh, that's right. Fred's in Connecticut. That's right.
Yeah. That's why when you said Papa Doug, he had no idea, and we all know who Papa Doug is.
I just nod. I'm just here to nod and agree with the guest.
Yeah. So, Steve, what is different? Name a couple things that are really different today than they were before. A couple things, and then things you really love today that you couldn't do before, and things you don't like today that you didn't want to do before. Meaning.
Yeah.
Before now, what's different, from your experience that people would want to hear about? Because, I'm hoping that we're going to see a lot of San Diego, look at this and go, oh, I haven't seen that guy in person in so long. He looks the same. Or, my God, I had no idea he was such a good looking guy. Or because, your face, I don't think it really showed much in your work, did it?
No, I tried to keep myself out of my work. Yeah.
So this is your coming out event then?
I guess so. Yeah. People are like, "Who? Look at that gargoyle. Look at him." I'm saddened. I'm saddened by the state of the industry, which I mentioned. Then the other thing that's so different, I also mentioned, is how polarized we are. It makes commentary very challenging for us because people really want to kill you. They want to either cancel you or kill you these days if they disagree with your cartoon. So those are my two biggest, and plus the loss of my colleagues. We used to go every year to conventions and have fun sharing notes and sharing cartoons that were killed by our editors. And, we drink and laugh and just talk about our wonderful profession. But those days are gone. We don't do that anymore so much because just the pool of guys is small. So that's sad. But the digital revolution really is interesting, and it really is. In a lot of ways, it's very good for an artist because think about YouTube. You mentioned people looking at me. You could really develop a following if you're some kind of an artist now on YouTube, talking it through, sharing your work as you're commenting on things, or Instagram. You could you could post work and have it all over the world instantly. And you couldn't do that in the old days, especially for a young up and comer. If you're a talented, hungry, young up and comer, man or woman, no matter where you are in the world, you can get your stuff seen and appreciated right now, which is really awesome. Like, think about, humanity and think about, human civilization. There could be someone who otherwise in the old days, some young woman in Thailand who never would have gotten her work seen by the art community, but maybe she does these murals that are so cool, or these watercolors that are so mesmerizing and beautiful, and now she could become famous and even get rich. So that's what's cool about digital.
Have you? Is that on your radar to take? I mean, you have obviously quite an archive. Have you thought about developing a platform to do that? And
No.
Have you written a book about your work?
I've done children's books.
Okay.
I've done children's books. In fact, if I could plug 2 books that are coming out, Sky and Ty, Part 2, and Sib Squad, coming out in the spring. I'm sorry, that was shameless, but I do children's.
I like the way you asked permission and didn't wait for an answer. That was great. Do you mind if I plug this? Oh, by the way, I will. No. This is your look. This is your getting red. This is your 30 minutes to talk about whatever you want to talk about. So we don't call that plugging. We call that advocating for oneself. So whatever you've got on your radar, and how people can contact you and where they can go to get your books, and how you're going to monetize that, and how you're going to help me get famous with the opioid crisis and solving homelessness, because we got to figure something out. I want to do something like that with you, because most people in the media, they don't like talking to me because hey, Scott, can you give us the update on the current morbidity rate on the opioid crisis? Nobody wants to talk about that. And, solving homelessness seems to be like a balloon that our leadership tends to grab and goes in a different direction. So we'll talk more about that down the road. But no, feel free to share whatever you want people to know, because I think it's important. Fred and I have created this platform because we want to give people mechanisms to better understand. And before we let you go, I want you to certainly talk about that unbelievable piece you just wrote about the opioid crisis, because I think that's important as well. But let me let you finish your plugs, and then we'll sit back and light our pipes, and you continue on.
No, I thank you, Scott. I do books on the sides, and they're lots of fun. I do little projects here and there, but I've never really gotten into drawing for YouTube. I wish I had. It's kind of a young person's game because you need time. Believe it or not, the filming is kind of the easy part. It's the editing of those things, that takes a while if you want to do it right. But anyway, the fentanyl project, I'm happy to talk about that. It's kind of a new project, and I'm proud of it. And you certainly gave me some good feedback and some thoughts that were at the ground level a couple years ago to get that started.
So what motivated you to do that, and what and how long did it take, and where did you go for information, and what made you stay with it and finish it?
Yeah. So I just did a project for iNewsSource called Fentanyl: A Decade of Death. And it was it's about a 15-minute read, and I encourage anyone who's interested in fentanyl to go check it out. I spent a year putting it together, and I talked to everyone from the San Diego County Sheriff's Department to the local DEA. I talked to a DEA chemist for a while. I talked to some DEA agents. I talked to doctors. I talked to addiction specialists like Scott, and I talked to victims and people who have lost loved ones. And I kind of put all my notes together into this package, which looks at the scope of the fentanyl crisis over the past 10 years, how San Diego plays a role in this drug coming into America, and just these gaping holes all over our society that have been left from fentanyl. I mean, certainly from all sorts of drugs, and opioids, but this thing zeroes in on fentanyl, and it's wicked, deadly qualities.
It's definitely something we're dealing with, that Scott and I often say that it would be nice one day not to be able to have a show, but we're both smart enough and realize it's impossible, most likely, to solve it all in 1 week, in 1 year, 10 years, 20 years, but we could limit, at least to give the knowledge out and the education. And that's what we try to do here, with a little fun. And I think it's a lot of fun having someone like you, because I actually enjoy the cartooning type of world. And I, even before I go, I want to tell you that I had the honor, I guess, I don't know how famous this gentleman is. I believe he's pretty famous, because he was a big time cartoonist for the New Yorker. And his name was John Stevenson. His name.
Yeah, he was. I want to say he was big in like the 70s and 80s, right? Is that right?
Well, he died in 2017, but I got to meet him in 2015. My friend at the time, Dr. Richard Selzer, who was another famous surgeon who turned author. He was in his 80s when I met him, and his friend was this gentleman. And I think he went back 50 years with the New Yorker and stuff. Yeah. And it was very specific, but he did give me this. I want to show you what he gave me. He gave me this.
Oh yeah. Is there a caption? There's a chart with an arrow going down, and what's the caption?
Well, he wrote it in underneath. He wrote, "Well, sir, perhaps you'd rather give cash." I have no idea what it means, except for the investment thing.
That could be not only an original, but it could be maybe an idea that didn't they thought of another caption. So maybe that didn't appear in the New Yorker with that caption. But
yeah, he told me it's one of his originals. This is how he drew. Yeah, initially, before the shrink down and everything. Yeah, sizing. But these were from his private collection, he called it, and he gave me that, and he signed it. So
okay, so that's really cool. I don't have a New Yorker original, and New Yorker cartoons are so funny and just smart, and I love them, and I've loved them since I was a teenager. And I tried so hard to get a cartoon in the New Yorker when I was in college. I was sending off all the time, and they send you these rejection slips. So I have a whole folder somewhere of my New Yorker magazine rejection slips. So one day I said, okay, I'm getting rejections from the New Yorker. Let me try the Saturday Evening Post. You remember the Saturday Evening Post? So that was kind of like the poor man's New Yorker, right? And so I sent my cartoons there, and they sent me a letter saying, "Congratulations, we like one of these. We're going to run it." So I went around my campus. I was only 19. I went around my campus at UC Riverside telling everyone I was going to be in the Saturday Evening Post with a cartoon reprint. No, it wasn't a reprint. It was just with a cartoon that they were going to buy. And of course, none of the students, even back in 1989, knew what the Saturday Evening Post was, or few did. And then the Post sent me another letter saying, "Oh, sorry, due to space considerations, we cannot run this cartoon that we told you."
You looked like a fool.
So I looked like a fool. But then a week after that, I had done a cartoon on the Soviet Union, a political cartoon, a cartoon with some commentary with it, and I sent it to Newsweek magazine, and Newsweek reprinted that. So that set me on this course of, wow, I'm going to do this for a living. Forget the New Yorker gag cartoons. I'm going to do cartoons based on the news, and I'm going to try to get a job at a newspaper. Because look, Newsweek says I'm okay.
I would assume that. So a lot of people don't talk about the cartoonist. They talk about the cartoon, but they don't talk about the person that created the cartoon very often.
No.
Did a show like Seinfeld help you when they did that one episode about cartoonists?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it didn't help me, but we all got a kick out of it. We all thought it was hilarious. Because
that's
right.
what
people don't talk about who the people behind the cartoons, unless you're Charles Schultz or Gary Larson, right? These names.
Yep.
But the rest of us, no one knows who we are.
Yeah, it's such an interesting, and I love that you're 19. You didn't care about money at that point. Now you got to worry about a paycheck at the same time.
Yeah.
You know, it's so freeing to think when you're 19, all you wanted to do was get yours into the, you would have probably paid to put it in there.
You're right. You're totally right. Yep.
And money changes things.
Yeah.
But speaking of that, how does a cartoonist on payroll, where does it fall? Do the Pulitzer Prize matter at that point?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Winning a Pulitzer. This is kind of the traditional answer. Going forward, it all bets are off because there's so many like nonprofit newsroom. Like I work for a nonprofit now, and newsrooms don't have any kind of budgets at all. But 25, 30 years ago, if you won a Pulitzer at your newspaper, you were guaranteed a raise and guaranteed job security.
Yeah, is AI going to affect it?
Yes, I think that AI is going to affect anybody who creates images right now, whether it's a pen, ink, or whether it's someone just using Photoshop or Illustrator. AI is going to transform that industry that they're trying to sell those pieces of artwork.
Well, more importantly, do you see a value of AI though? Can you see it?
Well, I do.
From it?
Yeah, I do. I'm kind of two minds because I see its value as a tool, and I've used it as a tool. Like, I'm having trouble visualizing this particular angle on something, like a bunch of people charging down the street, and they're all carrying pitchforks, or whatever it is. And I've looked at AI to see what AI suggests. I don't use the image, but I'll use it as a tool, kind of like I use Google image search to look at a fire hydrant if I don't know how to draw that.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. Sense. What do you got there, Scott? Anything new to add?
Thanks, Fred. Appreciate you waking me up from my nap and making me part of it. So, Steve, a couple questions. One, what is it you would like us to ask you that we haven't, that you always wish somebody would ask you?
That's cool. How about it must be very stressful having to come up with cartoons on a daily deadline.
Okay. What's that like?
To which I would say, yes, you're absolutely right. It is. No, it's one of those professions, cartooning. People think, oh, you have it easy. That's got to be so easy. But in drawing it, that's only like the tip of the iceberg of the daily duty of a cartoonist. It all starts with doing lots of reading and maybe even a little research, talking to your editor, talking to coworkers, talking to neighbors and friends, and then formulating an opinion. And then once you have your opinion, you're like 70% there. Then the rest of the way is just, okay, what's a creative way I could make that opinion in a visual form? And then I just have to draw it, So because there's so many news stories percolating at once, right? So you got to pick a news story. You have to pick a topic. And then there's so many gray areas in life. Life is filled with nuance, right? and it's filled with shades of gray. But the best cartoons are not shades of gray. The best cartoons don't equivocate. The best pieces of commentary, whether it's a cartoon or a written editorial, it's like, boom, this is how we should think about this politician, or this policy stinks because it's horrible. You can't do this wishy-washy thing of, well, on one hand, but on the other hand, blah, blah, blah. It just has to lay it out there. And to do that's it's very hard, because I don't know. I just find, maybe I think too hard, but I find that there's so many shades of gray that get in my way of coming up with a really fun, easy cartoon.
Are you from home? Do you work from home?
Yes.
Yeah.
I do. Yes, I do.
And how long has that been?
I do go into the office. I mean, mostly at home, but I go into the office, at least every other week. And that has been since the pandemic. So 5 years now.
Yeah. Do you find it easier, or?
Well, I used to hate it. I used to hate the isolation, but now I've come to kind of, see the time on the freeway as a big waste.
Yeah, I agree.
So personal question about the isolation, because I like to think of myself as a people person.
Yeah.
And what I've learned with the isolation is, I went to Walmart last Sunday and I got a cold, and a couple of years ago when I went, I got COVID. So I'm thinking the less I go out, the happier I am.
Yeah.
It seems like, and I've learned to do so much virtually now that it's almost, unusual to be around large crowds. And not that I can't do it. I feel like, I get there early so I can leave late. And when I'm there, I'm anxious to kind of leave because I want to kind of get back to my cocoon. But it could be my, the syndrome I'm part of, the AGE. You just, things change as you get older, and I find myself wanting to, I spend more time at home than I ever have. And of course I'm in this little 8x8 shed. So, it's not like I don't have a bathroom here. So I have to go inside to eat and go to the bathroom.
Yeah,
but,
that's good.
I close that door, and, my dogs are here at my feet, and that's kind of cool. My wife is welcome to come out whenever possible. She has to make a reservation. So we keep it simple, but, I love that.
Keep that marriage alive.
Yeah. So we're gonna give you the last thought. So what is it you would like people to know about you, your work, the industry, but a thought that would cause them to want to come find you? And how do people find you, just by the way, for your book? And if they have questions, and, there's always somebody out there that has an idea that they think is better than anyone's, that they love to have someone, create and put together and, draw. And then another question I had is, what medium do you use to physically do your work?
That's a neat question. I use an iPad Pro, and I'm using, there's the pencil you can see there, and I use an app called Procreate, and it's so amazing. I love working digitally now. I used to have trouble with it. I used to love my pen and paper, but I'm all digital. They can find me at Steve Breen 100. Instagram, Steve Breen 100. But my main platform is my place of employment right now, which is inewsource.org, inewsource.org. And
and that's 100% online, right? Isn't it?
What's that?
That's 100% online. They don't print anything
online. And I also have a Substack, Cartoonishness, Steve Breen. You could look up Cartoonishness by Steve Breen on Substack if you're so inclined. So I'm kind of out there a little bit, in more ways than one. I guess my philosophy has always been this is a visual medium, so try to keep the words to a minimum and just lay it out there with a strong image or two. And I'm pretty moderate. I'm not a partisan in my mind. And I think that no matter what happens with technology, there's always going to be a need for a simple static image that crystallizes a news story and lays it out there.
What's that saying? A picture's worth 1,000 words.
There you go.
Well, I have an image. For you because I get the feeling that with this Sunday coming up, that one of your drawings is going to involve a stupid eagle because you're probably an Eagles fan, right?
I kind of am. I especially at Super Bowl time because I'm tired of seeing the Chiefs win.
Okay. Is it going to involve Taylor Swift, like being swept away by an eagle or
that is amazing. You mean like a giant green eagle chasing Travis and Taylor?
Yes.
Yes.
Separating them.
No, Fred obviously went to my Instagram and he saw an AI image that I generated of just that, a giant green eagle chasing Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce.
Yes.
I do like to mess around and fool around with Midjourney.
Yeah, me too. I love it. I use all my, like you were saying, the editing portion. I edit videos all night. I work all day and then all night long. I have 3 different YouTube channels, including this one, your crisis coach. And I record on one night and edit the next. I do 14 videos a week.
Yeah.
And I with green screen and all that. So I utilize AI for my thumbnails, for research, titling, SEO, stuff that just bogs down my time because I need my time.
Yes, exactly.
So that's going to be it, Scott. That is going to be it for your crisis coach. You want to give your phone number before we go?
I do, yes. My phone number is area code 619-993-2738. And if you're thinking about asking for help, not sure how to ask for help, or you have a family member who thinks you really need some help, 619-993-2738. And I want to say, Steve, thanks so much for coming on today and hang out for a minute or two. And there's a couple things we can chat about. And it was really great. An honor having you here with us today.
I loved it. I loved it. I absolutely loved it.
Appreciate it.
I loved it. So if nobody has told you they love you today, we love you. And we will see you again next week on Your Crisis Coach with Scott H. Silverman and me, Fred Carroll. We'll see you next week.